Te trajo sí. Trabajando y no le pagan. Hi, Karina. Just so you know, your Zoom name is like.
Yeah, sometimes it changes the name, and I don't really know why.
Huh, that is weird. I was worried that you were gonna be like one of those Zoom bombers, and I was gonna have to dump you.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you had your video on. There it is. Now it's the first name. That's good. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Good, how are you?
So it's warm enough to be outside, huh?
Not really, but having a jacket on works.
Okay, because I looked out my window like 20 minutes ago and it was snowing.
Yeah, it's cold enough to snow.
Yeah. This weekend was crazy, or maybe it was Friday, whatever day it was, that it actually snowed. Let's see. But we went out for a walk yesterday, and I know it snowed, but there's a ton of beautiful wildflowers out already. Like I saw some trillium. I don't know what these little ones are. There's like heart-leaved arnica, and then there's these little beautiful purple ones all over the forest floor. There were a ton, and I sent them to my friends, and they were saying like they thought they were from last year, but spring is coming. Spring is coming. There's Riley.
Hey, what's up?
Beard.
I know. I'm looking pretty messy.
That's your quarantine beard?
Yeah, it is.
Nice.
There's no reason to shave, right? We're not going anywhere.
That's true.
So, just having fun.
Just to let everyone know, I set these meetings to automatic record so that I don't forget to record them so that I can post them up for people to watch. So don't trash talk the people who aren't here. Okay, we'll wait another minute, see if anyone's going to log in, and then we'll start on this. Let me open the sheet. Okay, so we'll just start because it might be, well, these are optional, and it might be that some people are going to join the one on Wednesday instead, which, you know, if people don't bring their own questions, it'll basically be the same thing. Now for this one, thanks for coming to you guys, but I did just post the review sheet up like an hour ago, so you probably haven't had a chance to look at it, but I'm going to go through it today. So I made this little presentation because there's a couple announcements, and I feel like it's easier to see them this way. So check this out. So this is the slide I had last time. I just think it can't be said too many times that our exam is Tuesday, May 19th. It's a timed exam on Moodle, but you have 24 hours. So same as the midterm. The 24 hours will start at 10:15, which seems like a random time, but our actual assigned time for the exam is 10:15 to 12:15 that day. So I'm going to open it at 10:15 that day, and at any time in the next 24 hours, you can check it out and take it. And when you check it out, the clock starts. So every single person in this class took the midterm, and 2 people needed to take it not on Moodle for different reasons. But everyone else is already a pro. You guys all did it successfully. So if you did it successfully, then don't be stressed about this at all. You're just going to do the same thing, right? I sent an email about this morning, but if you need accommodations for the exam, so if you have a letter from Student Accommodative Services, or if because of COVID, like if you've been meaning to get one this semester but haven't yet, I can help you by emailing them, etc. So if you need accommodations for the exam, make sure you let me know, because I can basically set it to allow you to have additional time. Now, when we get to the exam review sheet, I'll show you. I don't think well, you're the best judge of your situation, but I will tell you that the exam's going to be similar to the midterm, and I saw that a lot of people finished that. I saw on Moodle a lot of people finished that in like 40 minutes, and you had an hour. So you have 2 hours for this. So definitely, if you think you need accommodations for that, ask for them, but you probably will have extra time anyway. Just throwing that out there.
How much longer is it compared to the midterm?
5 questions.
So it's just a lot of extra time, just in case.
Yeah. So basically the final exam isn't cumulative. So because of that, so it's just from the midterm on.
Right.
Because of that, it's a little hard to make it like a 2-hour exam. So it doesn't really make sense. It's just like testing the second half of the semester like way more intensely than the first half, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not cumulative. So because it's not cumulative, it's really just like an exam. You can think of it as like exam 2.
Got it. Yep.
Okay. So, okay. Look, I put a meme in here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm old. I did a meme.
No, it's cute.
It's not my cat. It's a cat on the internet. So this cute kitten is asking you to please do the class evaluation. So I'm really worried that no one's going to do the class evals because they're not.
I actually just did them.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you can just tune me out and look at this kitten while I tell everyone else.
Yep.
What's happening with this kitten's pupils?
I don't know.
Kitten is on drugs.
Definitely. They need to get the proper emotional facial expression for the movie.
Maybe that's what they did to him. So anyway, there's something going on with this kitten, but you can just look at the kitten, Riley. So the reason I want the evals is because I've never taught this course before. I just designed it this semester. So I really depend on, in part, like I always write after each week what went right, what didn't go well, what to change. So even comments like, Jen, I remember you sent me a comment a while ago about what was wrong with workshop 7 with that one cell. I don't think I ever wrote you back, but I really valued that. I copied and pasted it right into the sheet because I need to change that next time. So apologies for not responding to your email, but it was valued. So I really appreciate feedback that student gives me because I can make the class even better next time. If we have to teach even like in part remotely in the fall, which I'm hoping is not the case, but we still don't know, right? Then I can improve how it's taught online, right? So that will be a big help. And then also it's my first year here and my continued appointment depends in part on these reviews. Like they look at student evals as part of deciding whether or not to appoint you. So that goes both ways. Like if you really didn't like my teaching, here's your chance to weigh in on that. But if you did like my class and the teaching, then you can weigh in that direction. So either way, but I'm worried that since they're online, like people aren't really gonna do them as when they're in class.
It popped up for me as if it was required when I signed into Moodle. It was like, do the survey. It gave me an option not to do it, but it kind of implied that it was important, so.
Well, I'm glad, but it's not required, right? Just like in class, like when we give those paper evals in class, you could just sit there and not fill it out, right?
Yeah.
Most people do them in class. It's just like now it's another task for you guys to do, and that's why I'm just encouraging people to do it. So just a couple other reminders about the evals. You all got an email about it, I think. That's what they told us was going to happen. Did you get an email this morning about it? Well, that's what they told the faculty was going to happen. And then also through Moodle, which sounds like is how some of you guys have accessed it. When you log in, something comes up and tells you to take it. But if you miss that, then here's where you take them. You look for this link on the lower right-hand side of your Moodle dashboard. And it's just like, it's annoyingly named evaluation kit. Like that's not totally clear that that's where you do your course evals for the semester, but that's where. So you just click on there. Just a couple other clarifications. It's the same eval you've always done. If this is your first year, you haven't always done it, but it's the same one you did last semester, the same questions, but online. It's not any longer than that. And I, just as always, I won't see the results till after the grades are in. So definitely speak freely on there. They don't give us access to read them until after May 27th, which is when grades are due. So that's all I had to say about evals. I just wanted to let you guys know those couple things. And then this is the way we're doing evals from now on at SUNY Potsdam, actually, instead of paper. So figure out how to do it so you can do them in the future. Okay. So any questions about that stuff before I open the actual exam review sheet? Okay. Then let's go to the exam review sheet. Share. I see something in the chat. Same. Oh, are you saying, Karina, that your thing popped up?
Yeah.
I think that's,
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, that's good to know. They told us they would be sending you an email, but that seems effective too. Because when they told me where it was going to appear on Moodle, I was like, I can't even find that. Okay. Here is the final exam study guide. So I'll walk you through this and you guys can ask questions as you come up with them. But I posted this study guide under today's date on Moodle, under Friday, and under Wednesday's date on Moodle in 2 separate places so that whoever logs in on those days can check it out. So it's going to be online. This is the stuff I already told you all. 24 hours. As soon as you check it out, the clock starts ticking. So that's the format. The content, it's pretty similar in terms of what will be covered as the midterm. So it will focus on the exam presented in the lectures, readings, and workshops. And I'm listing them here. Now, there's 2 things that are pre-midterm exam questions that will be covered in the final. I decided to ask about them again on the midterm because everyone didn't do as well as I had hoped on them in the midterm. Some people did great, but the overall performance wasn't as good as I was looking for on these very key concepts. So I'm going to retest those. Now we'll just go down and you can see what they are. They're in green, right? So define the 3 levels of biodiversity and explain the importance of each. And that is what? What are those 3 levels? Who remembers?
I know it, but I'm trying to. It's like a broad thing to say, the 3 levels. So I'm trying to like.
Yeah, I'll give you a hint. Like if you're thinking of them as like a really tiny thing, a medium thing, and a huge thing, the medium
Is it like the ecosystem, the individual, the community, and the ecosystem? Is it like that?
Okay, that's like an ecological perspective, but it's the International Union for the Conservation of Nature's ecosystem is one.
Wait. Say it again.
Ecosystem diversity.
Yeah.
Is
And
one.
then, and then genetic diversity.
Yep.
Species diversity.
Yes.
And ecosystem diversity.
That's right.
Gotcha.
So you can think of we're looking for diversity on multiple levels. A super tiny level of genetic diversity, like a human-sized level of species diversity, looking at how many species are in a place, and then an ecosystem or landscape level of diversity. So you want to know. So that was covered before the midterm. So you want to go back and review that. And then the second one is explain what ecosystem services are. So there were quite a few questions on the last exam asking about, a farmer has some forest by his house and he does this and that, but what is the forest providing him? So I want people didn't do as well as I wanted on those questions. And it's very important because this is the class for non-majors, I assume that people in this class are interested on some level in biodiversity conservation, but I want you to be able to take back to your different fields like an elevator speech that will convert anyone to understanding why it's important. And a big piece of that elevator speech is ecosystem services, right? So it's not that you're preserving the forest because you're like a hippie tree hugger. You're preserving the forest because that's what's bringing you clean water, clean air, lumber, right? Recreation areas. There's all these reasons that have nothing to do with like your political viewpoint or your like spirituality, like zero to do with that. Just facts of how the ecosystem works.
You said elevator speech. Is that like, does that mean like it's applying to everybody? Like you're going up and down on an elevator? What do you mean?
Oh no, the term elevator speech, sorry if you haven't heard that. That means it's a tool you'll learn throughout college in other classes. It's basically like you work at a company, you just got in the elevator and the CEO of the company got in the elevator with you and you have the length of an elevator ride to pitch him your idea and become
okay, I got it. I was thinking it was more like metaphorical.
No, it's pretty literal. So it's like you're at Thanksgiving with your uncle who hates nature and you have only 40 seconds, which is how long he has patience for to convince him, right?
It's like diffusing a bomb. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, your uncle's not that, threatening.
Hopefully not.
But so ecosystem services are an important piece of that elevator speech. So I often find that people coming into, at the beginning of this class, I haven't taught it before, but similar classes, the main reason people think we should preserve nature is like, because we should, it's our duty, like it's not fair. It's true, but not everyone's going to agree with that, right? But there's like basic physical services that nature provides us that you can't agree or disagree with. Like it's happening, and if you don't protect it, it won't happen. So I want us to move towards that level of understanding and away from the understanding of like, seals are cute, so we should save them. Okay, so that's the only 2 points from before the midterm. That make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All the other points on here, we can go to them in a second, are all from these topics that we covered post-midterm. So that's the 5 topics we covered post-midterm. Now, just like with the midterm, there's some short multiple choice questions, right? There's some short answer questions where I'm asking you to say in like a phrase or a couple words the answer to a question. And then there's the essay questions. Last time I think I ended up having 5 short answer questions, 1 paragraph. And people tend to do well on those actually, because there's partial credit. So almost everybody, unless you leave that blank, which I would never recommend doing, like write something because you may get part of it correct. So it's the same format. And like now that you've taken one of my exams, you would know how I write the exams for this. I like to take examples for the short answer ones. I like to take similar examples as to what you worked in the workshop, but like a different scenario, and ask you to like apply those skills to a new scenario. So as far as the workshops, you should look back at the workshops to make sure you could apply those skills to a new scenario. Now, I know I've been bad. I still have to grade workshops. I'm halfway done with 7, but I still have to finish workshop 7 and 8 and 9. I am going to do that this week. I've been, well, just like everybody, I'm just piled up with tons of stuff. But I will get to those so that you can look back at my feedback on your workshop before you take the exam that's asking you to look at questions on that workshop. So for everybody, 5 is graded, 6 is graded. About half of you, 7 is graded. But I will get to that by this Friday. So you'll have at least 5 days to look at them. So let's see, any questions so far? Okay, so let's go down to the terms. down here. Now, for some of you guys, this may just be like, you know, you didn't really have a chance to look at this because I posted it up an hour before this session. So this might be like, now you get to see what's on the exam, and then you review it, and then you come back on Wednesday and say like, I really didn't know what you meant by this. I thought I did on Monday, but now I can see I didn't. So here's what's on there. Some pretty straightforward things like the concept of extinction, be able to define extinct, extant, and extirpated. I don't know, guys. I don't know if I'm really gonna just read through all of these.
No, you don't have to.
You like 5 minutes to look at them, and then you ask me questions. Because me reading out loud, like I've never enjoyed listening to someone read a list out loud personally.
Do you have any specific points that you think are that you should emphasize, like that are most important, I guess, relative to what we've been learning? Or
I would say that if it's on this list, it's because I consider it worth thing on. Yeah, so nothing on this list is like more important than anything else. I create these guides pretty detailed so that if you use this as a study guide and you go through and make sure you can address each of these questions, you should do well. So I guess if you're trying to like streamline your study time to make it the most efficient, I would make sure you have all the lecture notes downloaded. Those are all on Moodle. And then just with them at your, so I also list these like chronologically. So these are like listed in the order that we covered the topic. So you can literally just like open the slideshow and go back and forth between this list and the slideshow and think like, there might be somewhere you're like, well, yeah, duh, I know what extant, extirpated, and extinct are. I don't even need to review that. Oh, let me go down to the next one. Okay. Maybe you don't remember the goals of endangered species management. So you go back to that slideshow and look. But I would say if you have the tools of the slideshows, the lectures, and this list, and you go through and make sure that you can take a couple notes on each one of those, then go to the workshops and just reread them. Basically just reread them, because except for workshop 7, where I asked you guys to do some calculations in an Excel sheet, they're all conceptual. I'm not going to ask you to do calculations like that worksheet and workshop 7, because that was really challenging for people, because this was totally my fault. Like I just forgot that people with Chromebooks basically can't use Excel. So that was a completely unfair assignment to those people, because how are you supposed to, if you don't, like if we were on campus, that'd be a totally fair assignment. It's like, well, go use one of the hundreds of computers on campus that has Excel, but we're not. So there won't be anything like that on there. There might be math to the level of like addition and subtraction, right? Like you remember with some of the workshop, it's like, this would be the cost of this, you know, if you did it for this long versus this long. So if you did it for 3 days, you should be able to multiply 3 days by the amount it costs for 1 day to get the total of cost. So with that level of stuff, not like modeling in that worksheet. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't be asked questions like, what's the utility of modeling for writing these plans, right? Similar to what you were asked in that workshop. So if you go through those 2 study approaches, then I would say you are well prepared for this exam. You each have different timelines and different schedules for your week, but if you have time to go through these by Wednesday and then come back and ask questions about the ones that aren't clear, then I think you'll do really well.
Cool. Test is Tuesday the 19th, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. Do you guys have any questions on any of those ones so far?
I'm gonna look for a second.
Yeah, look at them for a sec.
What do you mean by the 10th bullet down? It starts with understand the difference between.
Okay, let me go back to that thing.
Situ and ex situ.
This meeting. Oh yeah, so Zoom is mad at me now because I looked at another page. Here we go. So in situ and ex situ.
Yes.
Isn't
So
that?
that,
I was gonna guess.
remember what it is?
I think it's like in situ is protection in the environment, right?
Yes.
And then ex situ is like taking them out of the environment, like a zoo or something.
Yes, that's right. So if you look at the endangered species planning lectures, like protecting endangered species, actually, let me just go back up. I think it was it's in endangered species management section. So as Riley was saying, that in situ means that you're protecting a resource in the place where it occurs. So you have a species like the spruce grouse in the Adirondacks that's endangered in the Adirondacks. And so you implement protection measures right there in the Adirondacks. Like you protect spruce bogs and spruce groves so that they'll have their food. You restrict hunting season on them so they actually can't be hunted. And something they're doing here in New York State is they're actually doing like a genetic rescue of that species by bringing in individuals from Canada and introducing them because they were becoming very inbred because they had a very small population. So that's a great example of in situ management of that endangered species. Ex situ is like what they did with the California condor at first. So basically they're like, whoa, there's 7 left, or however many they were. We cannot trust that they're just going to be able to make it if we just protect land. We're going to capture them all and bring them to a facility where we breed them so that we can have more control over their recovery. There's some, and like I have really mixed feelings about that California condor one. That's why I used it. The amount of money that was spent to recover species that's like not really an umbrella species, and there's so few left, and so much money was spent on their recovery just because they're big and cool. But not being an umbrella species, it means like their survival isn't like guaranteeing the survival of a ton of other species. Like they're carrion eaters, right? So I like to see what students write about that example in the workshops, because it's always interesting to me to see whether students think that or they think it was worth it. But in any case, there are other examples of usually ex situ management is like really extreme cases. So a lot of people, myself included, would sometimes say ex situ is like, dude, it's a lost cause. Like spend that money on protecting some land. But not everyone agrees with that. So another example of ex situ is like there's this one toad species that a dam was built in Nicaragua, and the habitat of this one beautiful golden toad that was only found there was destroyed. And so they took all the remaining individuals they could find, and they're like breeding them in this breeding facility in the American Museum of Natural History, with the hope that someday activists will get the government to take the dam down, and then they'll be able to reintroduce them to that ecosystem. And it's just like, okay, I mean, people should totally follow their dreams, but I wouldn't donate to that if I could donate to something that, like a land trust organization that's protecting land for many species, right? Because what if they don't take down that dam? Like,
right.
So the ex situ examples can be really extreme. But sometimes they're effective, like zoos, right? So if you have zoos can have like a large network of breeding individuals where they're trying to maintain genetic diversity and an endangered species in the zoo, and it is possible to reintroduce them, right? Into the wild when habitat becomes available. So zoos are a situation where, like, sure, tigers, you're keeping tigers in there, but they're also making money so that they pay somewhat for their own conservation. And if habitat is restored, then they can be reintroduced. So it's not always in vain, but some. I'll tell you one other crazy story, which is, like, I worked on boreal toads in Rocky Mountain National Park when I was doing my master's, and they literally spent like millions of dollars to make this toad breeding facility so that we could get all these toads and bring them down so that they could breed and maintain toad genetic diversity, because chytrid fungus was killing all the toads. And so then the idea was, like, once chytrid fungus was cleared from the boreal wetlands, then we could reintroduce the boreal toads. But chytrid fungus, that was like 10 years ago. Chytrid fungus is still not cleared. And that facility is just still there, just breeding all these toads that have nowhere to go and employs like 10 people. And I mean, I guess it's a job creation, but, you know, our taxes pay for that. And I'm definitely in opinion territory now, right? But it's just, I just am not a huge fan of, like, ex situ conservation efforts focused on one species that has a small chance of recovery. So
Yeah.
that's probably more than you were looking for on there. Just think about that a lot.
I had a
Thank
question.
you.
Yeah.
So understanding the 3 levels of converting industrial agriculture to sustainable agriculture, be able to explain how challenging or how changing to each of these levels could help sustain biodiversity. So I was just curious what the 3 levels were, because I don't remember specifically.
Yeah, let's go to that lecture. Can you guys still see my screen when I change it to something else, or it just keeps showing you the same thing? You can, okay. So let's go to, I believe it was in here. So this lecture was the What's the next one? Okay, so it's in the week Conservation in Human Modified Landscapes. And so during that week, which was the April 27th to May 1st, we were focusing first on agriculture and how to make that more biodiversity friendly, and then like urban and suburban areas and how to provide ways for animals to cross through those. So that particular thing about converting to more sustainable, it must have been in the Wednesday lecture, Wednesday, April 29th. Yeah, here we go. So in that lecture on Monday, and then again on Wednesday, we were talking about sustainable agriculture and how it addresses some, you guys can see these slides right here? Okay.
Mhm.
And how it addresses sustainable agricultural practices address a lot of the problems caused by industrial agricultural practices, which, just to remind you, are like these things, right? So use of pesticides, excess nutrients, monocultures, irrigation, overgrazing. Those are things that have long-term negative effects on biodiversity, which then mean that biodiversity is not providing any ecosystem services to agriculture, which over time makes agriculture unsustainably expensive. So those are issues with industrial agriculture. Sustainable agriculture tries to address those. And what I was talking about here was like, well, okay, so if we know that sustainable agricultural practices are more biodiversity friendly, but we have a crap load of industrial farms, how do we convert them? And level 1 of converting them is like, so the point I was trying to make on the slide is that, again, you don't have to just go from being like Monsanto farm with like 10 billion acres of corn with pesticides sprayed all over it to being like a cute couple in their 20s who like just bought a farm and are raising pasture fed meats. Like there's an in between. And so level 1 is you're not changing totally to sustainable agriculture, but you're increasing the efficiency of industrial practices so that you're just not doing as much of them. Now, a perfect example of that was the video that I posted that day. Does anyone remember what that video was about? Remind us, Jen?
That was about how he was planting the like flowers and things around the very edge, so that way the different pollinators were drawn rather than spending a lot of money trying to grow crops in the edge where it wouldn't be very profitable anyways.
That's exactly right. Thank you. So that video was this British farmer. I think he was farming like soybeans and wheat or something, but essentially like he was having a hard time. It wouldn't have been wheat because wheat is wind pollinated. He was having a hard time with pollination of his crops. So he wasn't an organic farmer, but this advisory organization came in and was like, okay, well, you know, these boundaries of your field, like evaluate them for actual yield. How much money are you actually making off the edges of your field that are like maybe a little steep or rocky, like hard to run the machinery over? So actually it's just like the money it costs you to farm those margins is like more than what you make off of that amount of your crop. So stop farming those and plant wildflowers. You will then get a ton of pollinators helping with your pollination, and you're actually not losing any money because you never made money there anyway. So that's an example of a practice where he's not switching to sustainable agriculture. He's not saying like, well, I'm not going to use pesticides or fertilizers or machinery. He's just doing one thing that's increasing the efficiency of his industrial practices. He's actually going to probably make more money, right? And he's helping pollinators, which then in turn helps him. So that's an example of that level 1 conversion, right?
Yeah.
Another example of level 1 would be like, okay, a lot of farmers put a ton of fertilizers on their fields because nitrogen fertilizer is really cheap, because this is like extreme minutia to remember from intro, Riley and Caitlin, but we get nitrogen fertilizer from what? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was some weird I don't know.
It's around all of you right now.
Yeah, it's in the air.
Yeah.
But wasn't there's some kind of machine that would like filter it or something?
Yeah, the air is 78% nitrogen, and the Haber-Bosch process, which was invented in World War II, fixes nitrogen from the air. So literally, like, there's no input material. You just make that nitrogen, run the machine. So there's like some cost, right, with running the Haber-Bosch process, but not much. So nitrogen fertilizer is super cheap. It's also really bad to have too much of in the environment because it causes this, right? Eutrophication, too many nutrients.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of farmers are like, they will just put nitrogen fertilizer on all year round because like, well, why not? Crops need nitrogen. It's really cheap. I'll just put extra on instead of putting the recommended amount or the amount needed. But then they have issues with their water supply, not for their houses, but for their irrigation and their livestock, right? Their water's filthy. So another level 1 conversion would be to scale back your application of cheap fertilizers to only the required amount.
Right.
Same yield, and your water on your farm will be better quality for your livestock and irrigation.
Hey, I just want to say it says on
Yeah.
my screen that there's less than a minute left on the Zoom meet.
Oh yeah, they only give us 40 minutes. I should have made another one, but I do have a meeting at 2.
Okay.
I guess let's put whatever we don't finish, then we'll finish it on Wednesday. But basically, let me just tell you guys. So level 2, you're substituting practices, and level 3 is really hard. Level 3 is like you wipe the slate clean and start again. So that's not going to happen a lot. Well, level 1 and level 2 are really achievable.
Yeah.
So if you read that slide and just think about that example that I just gave you and watch that video again, you'll be able to answer that question. Like, I'm not going to ask that question at the depth that I just talked about it.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, thanks. That was helpful.
Okay, good. So guys, in case it cuts us off, read through that list, come up with other questions, and come back on Wednesday. It's fine to leave after your questions are answered. So even if you just have 10 minutes to come in, ask your question, and go, that's totally fine. Or you're welcome to stay the whole time, of course. So I think that's it. Anyone want to have a question that they ask and gets cut off? No? Okay, well then hopefully I'll see you all on Wednesday.
Okay.
Okay, take
Bye.
care.
You too.
Good luck studying.